The air was thick with the scent of soybeans and the faint hum of cicadas when I stood at the edge of my field, staring at the monstrosity before me. A Dula 250,000 wedding tent loomed like a gaudy cathedral, its white fabric billowing in the late summer breeze. Beneath it, a swarm of guests in tailored suits and stiletto heels trampled my fledgling crops, their laughter mingling with the thumping bass of a rented sound system. A caterer, a wiry man with a clipboard and a pinched expression approached me, his tone dripping with entitlement. "Hey man, could you move that tractor? It's throwing off the VYB." I didn't respond right away. Instead, I let my gaze drift to the shed where my two ancient manure spreaders sat, their rusted frames gleaming faintly in the dusk. A slow smile crept across my face as I flipped the switch in my mind. The roar of engines would come later, but for now, I savored the anticipation. How had it come to this? To understand, we need to rewind back to the day I thought I'd found peace, and before Diana crashed into my life like a freight train on a mobility scooter. 3 months earlier, I'd moved into my little slice of suburban paradise on Willow Lane. It was a corner lot with a tidy backyard, a sturdy fence, and neighbors who waved but didn't linger. I'm not the outgoing type, never have been, but I kept my lawn mowed, my sidewalk shoveled, and my head down. The HOA's 7-page manifesto on hedge heights and mailbox aesthetics didn't faze me. I'd skimmed it, nodded, and tucked it away. My new home came with one small quirk, an outdoor outlet near the front walkway, perfect for stringing Christmas lights or charging my electric weed trimmer. It wasn't much, just a quiet convenience I assumed would stay mine. That assumption held until Diana rolled in literally. It started innocently enough. One morning, I stepped outside to grab the paper and spotted a bright red mobility scooter parked beside my hedge. A thin black cord snaked from my outlet into the bushes, disappearing like a secret lifeline. I frowned, figuring some kid had plugged in for a quick charge and forgotten to unplug. The neighborhood had its share of teens zipping around on e-bikes. Maybe a parent had borrowed the juice. I shrugged, unplugged it, coiled the cord neatly by the outlet, and went about my day. By noon, the scooter was back, same spot, same cord, same audacity. This time I waited. An hour later, she appeared. Diana was a wiry woman in her late 60s, perched on the scooter like a queen on a throne. Her silver hair was swept into a tight bun, and she clutched a floral tote bag in one hand and a yapping chihuahua in the other. She rolled up, unplugged the cord with a flourish, and started to trundle off. I stepped onto the porch, keeping my tone light. "Hey there, just curious, did you ask anyone before plugging in?" She froze, turning her head slowly to fix me with a stare that could have curdled milk. "I didn't think I had to," she said, her voice a mix of syrup and steel. "It's just a little power. That outlet's right by the sidewalk, practically public property." I blinked. Public property? It was my wall, my wiring, my bill. But before I could argue, she flashed a smile sharp and insincere and rolled away, her dog barking like a tiny sentinel. That should have been the end of it. A weird encounter, a quick correction done. Except it wasn't. The next day, the scooter returned. Then the day after that. By the end of the week, I catch her plugging in twice a day, once in the morning, once at dusk. She'd wave if she saw me, cheerful as if we were old pals sharing a utility plan. My electric bill climbed $15, then $30 higher than usual. My breaker tripped twice, Leah VYing me fumbling in the dark. I sent a polite email to the HOA. Neighbor using my outdoor outlet without permission. Thoughts? Their reply was a masterclass in apathy. If the outlet isn't marked private or secured, it could be seen as accessible. Consider a lockbox if it's an issue. No warning to Diana. No mediation, just a shrug and a hardware store suggestion. I was on my own. I'm not a confrontational guy, but I'm not a doormat either. So I started documenting. Every time that red scooter appeared, I jotted down the date and time. I snapped photos, discreet ones, from my porch. I even installed a cheap motion-activated camera aimed at the outlet, its little red light blinking like a silent guardian. My introvert soul winced at the effort, but the part of me that despised freeloaders? That part was awake, alert, and building case. I wasn't ready to escalate, not yet. Not until the mailbox incident. My front yard had a small flower bed near the walkway, framed by a low brick border and a single solar-powered lantern. It wasn't fancy, just a touch of charm I'd added after MOVYing in. One evening, I noticed the lantern was gone, snapped off at the base, Leah VYing a jagged stump. The bricks were scuffed, and tire tracks cut through the mulch. Across the street, Diana's scooter sported a fresh smear of dirt and a shard of plastic that matched the lantern's casing. I marched over, still calm but firm. "Hey, Diana, did your scooter hit my flower bed? My lantern's broken, and there's tracks leading right to you." She didn't even flinch. "Oh, that old thing? I thought it was trash. It was sticking out, practically a hazard. You should really keep that area clear." My jaw tightened. She'd smashed my property, and now she was lecturing me? That smile flickered again, smug, untouchable, and she rolled inside, Leah VYing me steaming on her doorstep. That night, I called my old college buddy, Nate, an electrician with a knack for creative fixes. I laid out the saga: Diana, the scooter, the outlet, the lantern. I half expected him to say, "Just lock it up, man," but Nate's voice crackled with mischief over the phone. "You want practical, or you want poetic?" I grinned. "Can I have both?" Turns out I could. The next Saturday, Nate drove over with his toolbox and a gleam in his eye. We rerouted the outlet circuit through a separate breaker, fully legal, all on my property. He installed a smart plug with usage tracking, a remote kill switch, and a little tweak he called the equalizer. Whenever a heavy load, like, say, a scooter, plugged in, it'd trigger a surge just strong enough to trip her breaker across the street, not mine. No VY Cybele tampering, no direct interference, just a quiet, elegant trap. "She'll think it's her own system failing," Nate said, wiping grease off his hands. "Let's see how she likes that." The first test came Monday morning. I watched from my kitchen window, coffee in hand, as Diana rolled up. She plugged in, humming some off-key tune. 10 seconds later, click. The smart plug hummed faintly, and across the street, her porch light winked out. Her VYing room windows went dark. I peeked through the blinds and saw her silhouette flailing, arms while VYing like she was swatting a swarm of bees. She stormed out, scooter still tethered to my outlet, and glared at it like it had insulted her lineage. She unplugged, plugged again, click. Darkness. She stomped her foot, muttered something I couldn't hear, and rolled back home. 5 minutes later, her power flickered back on. 10 minutes after that, she tried again. Click. Out again. I sipped my coffee and smiled. Then she called the cops. I was pruning my hedge when the patrol car pulled up, and Diana rolled out behind it, gesturing wildly. The officer, stocky guy with a tired expression, listened as she spun her tail. I'd weaponized my outlet, booby-trapped it to punish a disabled senior. I handed him my EVY Densa camera footage, logs, Nate's compliance certificate. "She's been stealing my power for weeks," I said. "This is just my system protecting itself." Diana sputtered. "My scooter's a medical necessity. I have rights." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, did you have permission to use his outlet?" She hesitated, then delivered the golden line. "Well, he never said I couldn't." The cop smirked. "So, no permission." He turned to me. "You're good. She tries it again, call us." Diana's face went red, but she rolled off without another word. I thought that'd be the end, or at least a pause. But Diana didn't retreat. She regrouped. The next day, I woke to a knock, too polite, too rehearsed. There she stood, chihuahua under her arm, sunglasses perched like a crown. "Hi, neighbor," she chirped, venom lurking beneath the sugar. "Your outlet's acting up. My scooter keeps shorting out when I plug in." I leaned against the doorframe. "Yeah, had some work done. It's a bit pickier now." Her smile twitched. "It was fine before." "Was it?" I said, feigning confusion. "My bills say otherwise." She adjusted her glasses, muttered, "I'll talk to the HOA," and left. I wasn't worried. I had footage, data, Nate's expertise enough to bury her if she pushed it. She did. A week later, the HOA summoned me to a discussion meeting about accessibility concerns. Diana had spun a sob story, poor disabled senior, cruel neighbor blocking her lifeline. I arrived with a binder, logs, screenshots, electrician's notes. She sat there, smug as ever, claiming my outlet was a community resource I'd sabotaged out of spite. She even waived the chiropractor's note, blaming my electrical interference for her back pain. I slid my EVY Denke across the table. This isn't about access, I said. It's about her using my property without asking. She broke my lantern, too. The HOA president, Marla no-nonsense woman fresh off maternity leave, watched the footage in silence. When Diana opened her mouth to protest, Marla cut her off. You didn't have permission. End of story. Meeting over. Diana stormed out, muttering about discrimination. I hope she'd back off. Instead, she went nuclear. One afternoon, I came home to find a massive tent sprawled across my soybean field on my field. Stakes pierced the soil, chairs crushed my plants, and a generator hummed, its cord suspiciously close to my shed's outlet. Diana's niece was getting married, and Diana had offered my land to the event planner. The caterer's tractor request was the last straw. I didn't argue. I just nodded, walked to my shed, and fired up the manure spreaders. As the quartet tuned their VY Alines, twin streams of liquid retribution arced across the field. Guests screamed, Diana shrieked in her sequin dress, and I leaned against my tractor, watching chaos unfold. That's my line, I called, pointing to the property boundary. This half's mine, too. The tent came down by nightfall, the wedding relocated, and Diana's harassment claim went nowhere. Marla shut it down. You trespassed. Be grateful he didn't sue. You'd think she'd quit. Nope. She pivoted, pestering neighbors for rides, spreading rumors I'd rigged her house to fail, even planting a neon sign by my outlet. Property of Diana, do not touch. Then one night, she tried plugging in again. I watched the camera feed as she crept up under cover of darkness, plugged in, and buzz. Her house went black. This time, it didn't reset. Her breaker was toast. Her garage door jammed half open. The next morning, a pop and a wisp of smoke rose from her garage. An electrician arrived, shook his head at her tangle of cords, and left her with a bill in a dark front yard. The neighborhood turned on her. The HOA meeting that followed was a bloodbath. Marla laid out the EVY density footage, logs, neighbor complaints. Diana's defense was a theatrical rant about energy warfare and a neck brace she'd dug out for effect. Marla didn't flinch. You stole power, damaged property, and lied. You're off the board. Pay up. Diana was fined, banned from using anyone's outlets, and left humiliated. Her scooter vanished, her house dimmed, and her reign ended. But Diana wasn't done. She took her sob story to TikTok, a tearful video about a disabled senior persecuted by ableist neighbors. It gained traction, snagging a local news blip and a YouTuber's drone tour. I countered with a simple post my power bills, captioned, she stole from me daily. Here's proof. The tide turned. Her narrative crumbled under scrutiny, and a city inspection prompted by her final complaint cleared me, slapping her with a warning for false reports. In the end, I hosted a cookout. Neighbors swapped Diana's stories over burgers, laughing at her downfall. Her house sat dark across the street, a silent relic of her hubris. I locked my outlet, kept the receipts, and learned one truth. Peace in suburbia sometimes demands a little war and a well-timed switch. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.